Oh, it's preparing to stream and it says it's streaming. And now I'm going to shut down my distractions. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm just going to wait for the confirmation, everyone, so that I can see. Aha, I can mute this tab. And we can start off the way we start every Friday off, a very important ritual, which is the live pouring of the tea. Completely lost on everyone listening in the podcast. Oop, I'm going to spill tea on my lap as is part of this process. And I'm hoping the mic picks up this sound effect so that people listening to the podcast can really feel that they're a part of this journey of tea going into this teacup. What a mess I've made. I'm a disaster. Take care of that. All right, got tea. Let's have a sip together. Ooh, delightful. That's Paris at Night is the tea that we've got today. Bay really enjoys fancy tins for tea. So I can't tell you too much about the variety of tea or the bush it comes from, but I can tell you a great deal about the tins that various teas come in. And this one's a lovely purpley sort of kind of tea. Daniel, hey Daniel, good morning. Daniel's saying now he needs to pee. So I think maybe the sound effect has backfired, but that does tell me that the mic is picking up the sound effect. So you've given me some really valuable feedback there, Daniel. Thank you so much. I'm super excited today. We're going to have my good friend Annie join us. I'm going to have her come on in just a sec. First, I want to share what I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. What I've been working on ontologically, which is to say, like, not just like a project, but what has been the edge, I guess, for me as I take on my projects. And so the nature of that for me has been like, the best way I could probably describe it is nothing, working on nothing. And the way that happens is like this. The starting point is I'm very reliable to do stuff. I've always been pretty reliable to do stuff. And I credit, some of my early traction as a coach to this fact, where when we start out working as a coach, when we begin this career, Steve Chandler, a coach I really think is quite awesome. He shares, like, we have to do the blue collar work of coaching. We have to get out there. We have to hustle. We have to pound the pavement. We have to get into conversation. And often we have resistance to that because it's a bit edgy. In coaching, we're not really sharing. It's not like if I'm selling a widget and I can say, like, here's the widget. And if you don't want to buy the widget, you just say, oh, well, I can be like, he just doesn't like my widgets. Whereas with coaching, it's us. We're selling, if you like, a relationship. That's what we're putting on offer. We're putting ourselves forward. And so a lot of us have fear. We get stuck with that. And my reliability to act over top of how I felt, to take action regardless of what I was feeling, allowed me to kind of not get stopped there and to practice out on the edge, out on the other side. And this is something I learned from a very young age. It kind of was built into me from the way my loving, amazing parents raised me, which was to instill a really good work ethic. And I kind of learned to put my attention on what I needed to do rather than on what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do became secondary to what needed to be done. And as you get better and better at this game, you become someone very reliable to provide the results that are required. But there becomes this growing gap between that and all of what that gets you and what you actually want. And so I was very reliable to create a coaching practice that was successful and maybe even thriving and doing good. But my experience underneath all that was busy, frustrated, kind of like exasperated when my friends would reach out and ask if I wanted to do something and be like, oh, I can't, I'm so busy, I'm important, whatever the thing happened to be. And that's how it was. And so over the last few years, well, probably the last decade really, but the last few years in particular, I've been deepening into that more and more and more. And the way that's been showing up in practice lately for me is that one of the things I do is I set aside at least an hour every morning solely for writing, work on a book, write a post to publish, write a newsletter thing, whatever it happens to be. But I set up the structure in my life for that to write. And many times I get up and I don't want to write. And I think it was Edgar Allan Poe, but I may be misattributing this, who said, I only write when I'm inspired. Fortunately, I'm inspired every single morning at 9 a.m. So what he's sort of speaking to there is that he sort of creates inspiration rather than hoping that it'll hit him. So that's kind of how I showed up. I was reliable to sit down, like, I don't want to write. And then I would just start writing, and a bunch of garbage would come out often. And then like something pure and golden and beautiful would start to take shape. And as of late, I notice I haven't wanted to do that. I know that I know that I can make that happen, but there's this deeper part of me when I show up in the morning that's like, yeah, but not. Yeah, you could, but don't. And so I'm practicing sitting with that. And the second step that happens next is I go, okay, I'm not going to write. And it doesn't have to be writing. We could be talking about anything, but okay, I'm not going to write. And then what I do is I go and just like spend that hour doing something else. Go play video games, go watch TV, go diddle around on the internet. There's a lot on the internet you can use to diddle around with. So I'll go and diddle around on the internet. And on the one level, that's like kind of cool, like, wow, you're way to go, Adam. You're surrendering, so to speak, to what's showing up, which is like this desire not to write, or this like, that's not the thing to do. But as I've gone deeper into this with my coach and with the work I do with plant medicine, all of that sort of stuff, what I've discovered is that next step is still not getting to the base of what's really there for me. And what there really is there for me to do is to just sit and do nothing, to sit in meditation, to sit in quiet practice, and to really ask myself, what do I feel? What's showing up in this moment? What's actually here for me? And what I tend to notice often is usually there's some fear. Lately, there's been a lot of sadness, grieving. I don't even really know what it is that the fear is about, or the sadness. And in fact, my practice is not to go down that path. Like, what is this about? What does this mean? Why is this here? Because that brings me up into my head and gets me locked up there. So instead, I just sit with the feeling and trust that feeling, hold it as sacred. Morning, Andrew, good to see you. And so I sit and I feel these things. And the challenge now for me is that because I got so good at focusing on what I needed to do rather than what I want, rather than my desire, rather than my heart, I don't hear the voice of my heart that loudly. And so as I sit and practice and be with these things, they're minute or subtle or quiet. They're not gross and big, like sadness that I'm just racked and sobbing. That would almost be easier for me, because from that place, it'd be like something's happening. And instead, the practice is to be in the subtle study of this stuff, to sit with this very delicate experience that's going on for me, and not to run off and distract myself with something else. Man, is that hard work? It's so much easier for me to like go and distract myself, to stimulate myself. And like, what I'm learning as I be in the study of myself, what I'm learning is that even being racked with sobs, even being shaking on the ground out of fear, that would be a form of stimulation. And instead, I'm practicing plugging into the subtleties in my body, in my being. Crazy work, ridiculously hard. And so it's funny, because when people come in to do work in plant medicine, often what they're told is go towards what's hard. This medicine is going to guide you to sort of do some healing, and you want to go towards the stuff that feels hard. But for some of us, hard is actually like, that's the safe path. Because if I'm hard at work, then I'm not falling behind. Then I can trust that what I'm doing works. And sometimes what's hard, what's challenging, is really the softness, the subtleties. So that's what I've been learning over the past couple of weeks. That's what life has been teaching me. Let me just read what you guys have got, and then I'm going to intro Annie and we'll bring her on. So Daniel, you share, as a parent, our first leadership role is to our children. What are my thoughts on leaning on public education rather than instilling critical thinking? Oh my goodness, that's such a great question, and it's totally above my pay grade. Great question. Once we bring Annie on, we'll see. Maybe that's something we'll cover. We'll see. But I love that question, and if not here, then we'll talk about it next time, Daniel. And I kind of wonder, first leadership role is to our children as opposed to ourselves, to model what it is to be like a fully expressed human to our children. Anyhow, I've got some thoughts on that. Andrew, you write, I've been producing very little content as of late and feel a draw more to creating content where I'm interacting with others and being in connection. There have been so many things happening in my life where I'm getting to support others that I do want to share, though. So it's finding the medium that will meet that desire. Yeah, me too. And then Daniel, you write, I'm currently working on being present in the moment in order to replace and interrupt my ruminating thoughts. That's a beautiful practice. Okay, so let's talk about Annie. Annie and I met kind of, I don't know if we really met per se, when I attended the Essence of Mastery Summit. I think it was last year. And in the coaching world, those of us that are accredited through the International Coaching Federation, part of, like many bodies that accredit, there's a requirement that we get continuing education units. And like many bodies that require, like many professions, I should say, that require continuing education units, there's a vast array of what's available. And a lot of it is, in my experience, ends up being kind of ticking the box. So as a lawyer, we would require continuing legal education units. You'd show up to an event and you'd learn about like advances in maritime law, which is great if you're a maritime lawyer, but otherwise it was just sort of like you were sitting there and then you'd listen for the code word and then you'd check off the box and then, that's good. And for me, this was always hugely disappointing, where I kept signing up for these things and I'd be like, okay, I hope that there's some nuggets here. I hope there's something juicy. And it would be fine, is how I describe it. It's fine. It's good enough. I got the required units, but did I really transform? Did I shift into something beyond what I was already reliable to bring to the table? And if not, it's okay. It's just, there's a missed opportunity there. And so the Essence of Mastery Summit was really something else that was really exciting for me, which was like getting to learn from people really committed to mastering this work and actually getting units, credits, whatever, that really made a difference, that moved the needle. And that's something quite unique, I think, about this summit that now I'm a part of, that kicks off in June. So Annie's the one that created this, the mind behind all of it. Let's have you put on your camera and your mic, Annie. She's also a fellow Canadian, which is very near and dear to my heart. Yes, it's always like, Canada's a huge country, but it's always a little, I seem to meet not that many Canadians. Weird. We got to get more of us out there.
I agree. Agree. First of all, thank you so much. It was so much fun to watch you talk and listen to you talk and tell your story and watch you with your tea. And it's really great that you've invited me to face here, Adam. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. So maybe we can start here. Like, you've been doing this work for a while, and I know you're a corporate survivor and all that, but like, what led you into coaching? How did you get here?
Yeah, great question. Do we have a few years to cover? I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So, grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My father had a PhD in sociology. He was one of the pioneers of marketing research, consumer behavior, really. In the 60s, Vince Packard and the subliminal, revolution of really, now that I think back about it, was kind of a little evil, trying to manipulate people to buy things. That's what it was, digging into the human psychology of getting people to buy things, which at the time I didn't have the discernment to really think about it and go, this may not be the most, what's the word? Benevolent agenda, but it was fascinating to dig into that. And so from a very young age, I watched him do all these surveys and come up with, I don't want to get too much into the weeds there, but I grew up with that kind of a mindset. And he died when he was only 51 years old. I was 16.
Oh, so young.
Very young. And within a month, he had what was called galloping cancer. It was lymphoma. And from a very early age, he had been taking, an array of all these different colored pills.
Right.
And so he had high blood pressure and hypertension, and you name it, he had it. And he was a 2-pack-a-day smoker, because in those days, the doctors told people that cigarettes are healthy.
We were so innocent.
Yeah. And then many other things. So essentially, I grew up with that sort of corporate mindset. I went on to do a Bachelor of Commerce, and I went on to do an MBA. I have many, many years in the corporate world, in big corporate, Gillette and different.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Were you just like straight through when you went for your MBA? Was it kind of like, this is obviously the thing, or did you pause? How did that?
I relate to so much of your story, what you said earlier. For me, I had been groomed, if you will, by particularly my mother, who had been sort of nudging my father along to do what he did. And so when he died, she continued with me. I guess she saw that there was something there. Anyway, she really pushed me. And so I ended up, after my Bachelor of Commerce degree, I did take off and I went into the corporate world, and I worked there, actually at Gillette, for quite a number of years. And then I ended up doing my MBA in a year, which is kind of unheard of. It's usually a 2-year program.
A bit sadistic.
A bit sadistic, I'll say, that's for sure. And then really recognizing that I have something I'm here to do, but it was just a little misplaced. I just didn't know where it was. I sensed it, but I didn't know. So I went into healthcare. I'm from Montreal, actually, originally. And so I was doing healthcare within a hospital, which in Canada, as you know, is kind of an oxymoron.
Yes.
But I was really trying to get them to help supplement the global budget. So corporate, after many years of that and working with physicians and the executive of the hospital, doing all sorts of patents and copyrights and joint ventures, and doing a whole number of really complicated, complex business projects, I was wiped. I was working from 8 a.m. and, till midnight. I was working weekends, and I was like 28 years old. And this is insane.
Lucrative? Was it lucrative to be doing this?
It's super lucrative.
Right. So you kind of have the anesthetic of money a little bit as you're,
the check boxes, right? I had the doctor husband, I had the frequent vacations, I had lots of money in the bank. I had all, I had all the check boxes, because that's what you're supposed to do.
It's kind of like you can look at the list and be like, no, I'm happy. Look. And then meanwhile inside we're like, but look.
Was not happy. And I really didn't acknowledge it until I became 20, well, it was 27, 28 somewhere. There's Saturn return. I don't know if you follow astrology, but every 27, 28 years, Saturn comes back around the planet, and it just wreaks havoc in your life. It gets you back on track with whatever you're supposed to be doing. And for me, it was like, I'm not doing what I need to be doing. My grandmother died. Just before she died, she said to me, Annie, and actually my birth name is Tammy, by the way, which I never resonated with. Anyway, she said, if you keep doing what you're doing now, you're going to end up like me. And my grandmother, God bless her, she was a funny woman. She was brilliant and smart, but she was fear-stricken. And so I thought, that just woke me up. And so I left everything. And Adam, I gave away every single thing that I owned. I emptied out my bank account, and I took a one-way trip to India.
Okay, I got to ask, let me check in here. So that's like a big step, right? I imagine.
Huge. It's huge. It's terrifying. And so one thing I should back up is that I had been meditating since I was 16. And my father's 2 sisters had been studying in India with a guru. So there was a connection there. But, the corporate world is so anti-self in so many ways. At least that's been my experience. that it was like, oh, I can't look at that. That's just, that doesn't go along with my experience. But I was so missing me.
Uh-huh.
And so you talked about how you came from a habit of not really like having a practice of listening to your inner being was not something that you had a strong muscle in.
No.
I didn't either. I had no
Right.
practice of that. I was disconnected from my intuition. I was disconnected from, I didn't know what colors I liked. I didn't know what food I liked. I didn't know anything. And so when I went,
So how do you, because I can imagine this is a big step into listening to your inner being on some level. Like, is this and maybe you're about to say this, I'm just interrupting you too much, but like the crossing of that threshold, like how on earth, what catalyzed that? Like what gave you the courage, so to speak, to make that step?
it's a great question. And it's actually a story I tell a lot, because I always say this, you will continue to do more of the same and do what you've always done until, call it fear of what the change will be, becomes greater than the fear of the status quo. And sorry, the opposite, until
Yes, yeah.
fear of the status quo gets greater than the change you're going to make. And so I just, with my grandmother dying, and death has a way of making you kind of wake up and go, hey, I better get my act together, because, we're here for a certain amount of time. And so it just woke me up. And because I started really, and this was the main catalyst, I really got back into meditation in a really way. And if with meditation, what that does is you tune in to that inner stillness. And from that inner stillness is where all your inner wisdom is sourced.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sourced from that stillness, you access everything you need. So for me, because I'm such a type A and I came from that background, it's like achieve, 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 do. There's like being, what's being? I don't know what being is.
Yeah.
So opposite. And then I just, with that quiet that was suddenly there, I couldn't ignore how I was absolutely on the wrong path. I was just on the wrong path. So with the meditation, then I'm faced with, okay, so now I have a choice to make. I'm in a bad marriage. That wasn't bad, but it wasn't soul nurturing. It wasn't joyful. I knew I was not in the right place.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the right career. Like there were so many things that were just off for me. And in order to do what I needed to do to get back to me, I knew I needed to make a big change. I needed to go where I wasn't going to be distracted. I wouldn't have anybody nagging at me, telling me what to do all the time. Going to India, and I am not advocating this for everyone because this is not for everyone, but getting there, it took me three years, Adam, to start to connect. I used to wake up like, oh, I have to. Like there, I was so entrained to, I spent my first 3 years taking courses, and I'm busy. I'm like in the middle of the Himalayan mountains in this most beautiful setting in the world. And I'm busy. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm going to dinner parties. I'm having people.
It's like being on vacation and rushing to each museum and like, am I getting the most out of my vacation?
It's so not living. There's no living. There's no presence there. And because it eventually caught up with me after 3 years, I went, what am I doing to myself? 3 years it took. I can't believe it took that long.
So you'd moved, and then there's 3 years of what I would almost call like being in resistance to what there is. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
I wouldn't say resistance as much as automated.
Gotcha.
Continuing the automation of the programming that, so many of us have been subjected to through our school system and our families, and well-meaning, of course, nobody intends for anyone to, but everybody's doing it. So it's the normal.
Yes.
Right? Nobody's questioning it. And when I did leave that career, every single person told me I was crazy.
Yeah, that's tough, hey?
They all said, how could you leave that career? You have such a cushy career. And oh my God, you have a doctor for a husband who I put through medical school. How could you leave him? That's such a cushy future. Like there's money. And I said, because I want to live.
Uh-huh.
I want my life. I mean, I signed away my rights to any future income of his because I just wanted my freedom. And if you're anything like me, where freedom is everything, then, money, I'm not to say money's not important, money's important, but when you are free and you are connected to your inner being and you are sourced from within, money just comes because it's
Yeah.
endless. We live in abundance. And there's endless abundance. You just have to tap in. Like Abraham says, I don't know if you follow Abraham at
Abraham
all,
Hicks.
law of attraction, tuned
Uh-huh.
in, turned on, tapped in, like
Yeah.
when you are, everything's available to you. So
Let me speak to something on that point there. There's like, the collective, almost like cliche or wisdom, like money can't buy you happiness. And we all know it. Like we know that's true. But in my experience, we often, knowing is not wisdom. Wisdom is only gained through experience. And so sometimes we have to kind of, like you did, like I did, like attain that and then be like, hey, everyone, money doesn't buy you happiness. I've discovered this for myself. And then there's the other side of it too, which is the endless abundance you talk about. And then we can know that intellectually too. But at least for me, to really experience that, I have to step into it. And when I step into it, that's scary because there's that pull of my childhood training and programming and like the societal, like, make sure that blah, 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 blah. And it's very scary to lean into that. And then each time we lean in, we discover the truth of it more and more and more.
it is scary. You're right. Because change, like change is not comfortable.
Uh-huh.
And yet,
Yeah.
and yet change is the thing you can count on with every minute of every day. It's
Yeah.
absolutely guaranteed. And yet we resist change all the time. And so, maybe my example is somewhat extreme. To me, it was like intolerable to continue my life as it was.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely could not do that. I mean, I would come home from work. I was so stressed. I had to have a bottle of wine. I'd open the bottle of wine, have to drink until I could like just relax and chill.
Yes.
That's not a good future that I was building for myself,
And
And
the part about that I find is often, whether it's wine, TV, video games, porn, affair, all of it, we can name any of these things. It doesn't really, the wine, the TV, what they do is they put what we're really feeling on pause. Like it
it's
doesn't allow us to actually go
anesthetizing.
through. That's exactly right.
Anesthetizing. What it does is these things are distractions. They're distractions from our presence, because this is why people resist meditation, because
Yes.
when you sit in meditation, you are with your thoughts. They're inescapable, they're unavoidable. And now there are layers of thoughts, right? If you've studied the auras, you know that there's layers of the bodies. There's like the mental body, which is like all the thought field, and that's the busy, busy, busy part. But when you start going within and you source from that stillness, when you do it often enough, then it informs everything you do. So as I began to meditate more and build that muscle more, and I'm a huge advocate for meditation, as I know I'm learning you are too, because it connects you to your source, it connects you to your inner wisdom, but then you have cognitive dissonance because you recognize where you are out of alignment with who you really are. And so now comes the courage part. Can you make the choices to bring you into alignment with who you really are? Or are you willing to live out of integrity with yourself? And I couldn't. I just couldn't.
There's another part I find shows up, and I'm curious if you've had this experience. Certainly been the case for me, is that cognitive dissonance. If it occurred to us like, oh, I'm experiencing cognitive dissonance in this moment, that would be much easier. But the way it has occurred for me, and often I find some people, is that it occurs like something's wrong. Meditation's not working. These people in my life are not working the way they should. My husband's not, my wife isn't, all of that sort of stuff. So did you experience any degree of that, where it was sort of like a projection outward that you then had to unwind and find your way back home?
Absolutely. I don't know a
Okay,
human
good. Phew.
being who hasn't, and I still have elements of that can show up. I mean, we're all on the path, right? That's
Hmm.
that's the funny thing about mastery, like as if there's ever a destination. It's a journey. There's no
Yes.
such thing as, oh yeah, I'm there, I can relax.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I think what happens is that as we're going along, the world is a mirror. So if you're on the spiritual path, you know that I'm going to speak really woo-woo here. I hope that's okay. I'm a woo-woo.
Please. Yeah.
Um,
I have questions about that too, but first speak from this place.
so the world, it's one consciousness. It's one consciousness. It's one source for everything. And really everyone is just a projection of us. So if you're getting a mirror back of something that you're not liking, and the habit is there to think that, oh, it's someone else, you're going to keep getting more and more and more of those reflections
Yes.
back until you stop and recognize, uh-oh, this isn't about that other person. This is about me. I better stop and have a look here and pause. You talked about intuition and how it's hard sometimes to tune into that subtlety. I always say this, the intuition speaks to us in a whisper.
Yes.
If you ignore the whisper, it gives us a big nudge. And if you ignore the nudge, it will give you a 2x4. Right?
Yeah.
And that's, so many of us wait until we get that 2x4, whether it's, a life-threatening illness, or you're facing bankruptcy, or you're facing a divorce and you cheated on your spouse, or, whatever the reason is. If you don't stop and mine the gold, the richness of the experience, and recognize that everything that we choose, every experience is here in order to teach us something about ourselves. And then we pause and start looking at some of the habits that we've had of where we have pointed the finger. And that old saying, if you point the finger out, there's 3 pointing back at you. So I have so many stories, Adam. I don't even know where to start.
Well, I love like the intuition spirit sometimes for me speaks with a whisper, and then with an increasing volume. I love that for like a bunch of reasons, but one of the things that I find, it's easy to our ego will do everything in power to use fear to move us, because that's its job. And it's easy to take that and be like, oh crap, I need to pay attention now, or I'm going to get hit with a 2x4. And now it's hard to hear a whisper through that like energy. But the beautiful part about that is we will hear our intuition eventually. It will speak to us in a way that we can hear, so we can kind of relax a little bit, like you're not going to miss this train. Your deepest self is always speaking to you, and he will be heard. Maybe we
Well,
can relax a little bit.
I'll go even further than that. I believe we have a team of help. And that team is always whispering in our ear in a way that, and there's no, let's face it, time doesn't exist. So there's no rush. I mean, you'll get it, and you get it. The journey is really about how much can you be self-respecting, self-loving, but not service to self, service to others through respecting self.
Yes.
So I for me, those first 30 years really of learning how to tune into that quiet space, to that intuition. And I'm still learning. Oh my God, Adam, I'm still learning. How do we get those signs? How do we know when intuition is trying to get our attention? And sometimes you learn it by getting that 2x4 and you go, okay, so next time I have a story.
Great.
So 7 years I studied with this guru in India, and it was Socratic method. We'd sit in front of him and there were 200 people in the hall, and everybody, like, this could be happening day or night, all day long. It could be, it was all over the map, not scheduled. And I had been in a relationship that was really toxic. It was not a good relation. I'm married twice and divorced twice. So it took me a few tries. I now have a great partner, thankfully, learned it the hard way, but that's okay. No, it's okay to learn.
Needed the 2x4.
So this was the story. So in this relationship that I had been struggling through, I came into satsang. It's called satsang. I came into the hall one day and he could see that I was struggling. He was always tuning into me and he loved to call me up to the front of the room. Oh, what's going on for you? My name in Hindi was Gyan Shakti, power of knowledge. Come on up to the front of the room, Gyan Shakti. He boomed out in his voice and tell us what's going on for you. And, you know, I'm a shy person, Adam. I'm not actually one to like talk, even though with certain people I'm very comfortable. I can talk. Anyway, he, you know, I got up there and I didn't want to reveal too much personal information, but I just said, what do you do when you do the same thing over and over again and you feel almost helpless to make a change and you know that something is wrong for you, but still you make that same choice over and over again? And he said to me, when you get in a car and you go the wrong way, do you get out of the car and beat yourself up? Or do you look at a map and redirect yourself on the road? And he said, you get it when you get it.
Yes.
And you need the lesson to get it. So it really stuck with me because we are trained, I think, a lot of us to be very hard on ourselves. And certainly a lot of my mentees and clients are very hard on themselves, especially when you're doing feedback on an MCC eligible recording. You know, if you're applying for your Master Certified Coach credential and you're getting feedback from me, for instance, it takes a lot of courage to get that feedback.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm digressing.
Well, let me like one of the things I really am learning is like we all have a tempo, a process to move through, and we all have a story that we should have a different tempo. We should be getting this sooner. We should be getting this faster. And the like hallmark of this is captured in the saying, like, stop shooting on yourself. And what's hilarious is then we judge ourselves for shooting on ourselves, which is just like a new level. And it's like, that's the thing I find most fascinating about this work of expanding into our soul, into our being, into transformational realms of what's possible, is like the layers and the derivatives. The ego's so good at like, oh, got it, thanks for that lesson, now I will use that lesson and we will hold ourselves here because here is safe. It's fascinating.
Well, I mean, you're bringing up the ego, and that's a really good thing to be aware of, because ego comes up in coaching all the time too.
Yes.
Wanting to be right, wanting to have an answer, wanting to be an expert, wanting to be
provide value. Yes.
You know, that's a big one, right? And it's so important. And to me, the coaching, the MCC prep path is actually a coaching. It's actually a mastery life path.
Yes.
It's not separate.
Yes.
And so just recognizing something as simple as when you're talking to somebody, how present are you with them? Never mind in a coaching conversation, just in a one-to-one. You know, I experienced very few people were actually with me when I would talk to them. I could tell that they were thinking about other things. Their eyes would wander, or I lost their attention. I said, am I boring? Like, what's happening? Why aren't they here? Why are most people not present? And that's what makes the coaching conversation so unique, because a coach, hopefully, is really, really present with their client. And if you're on the coaching mastery path, then you have learned that, and this is where I think the training of the muscle and stillness comes in. So when you have, like, for me, it doesn't happen anymore. I don't get the chatter box when I'm with a client. It just doesn't happen. Maybe it's still there and I'm just trained not to pay any attention to it. I certainly have a chatter box other times. But with clients, I feel like we've gotten such discipline to be 100% over there with them. And that's such a gift. to be really there without judgment, to be there with them without the chatter, to be there without voting on whether they're right or wrong or good or bad or any of that. Did I
It's
take
very
us off?
freeing.
Yeah. Did I take us
Yeah.
off topic? Were we?
No, we're right where we ought to be. Okay, so I want to ask you about the woo, but first, Andrew asked a question here. How do you support folks to that same level of freedom that you've created, as you described, when they've got family commitments? So he says, I'd love to go to India or some space like that, but it would require changing the dynamic of my entire family, children, wife, partner, all of that sort of stuff. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question, Andrew. I'd love to can we get him on with us?
We can't. No, we don't have the technology to enable that.
Too bad. That would have been fun.
Yeah,
Because
we could set that up another time, but not this time. Yeah.
We should do that. Everybody's situation is different. And it always comes down to priorities. What is the most important priority for you in these 10 seconds? And if family is that priority, well, then, whatever it is, you do it. If it's hard, you do it. If it's easy, you do it, but just do it because you have to do it. You're choosing to do it. It's not a have to. This is my priority. I love my family. My family is important to me. I got to wait till my kid is 15 or 18 before I can do something like that. Or is it a conversation you have with your spouse or your partner where you go, how can we do this together in a way that might work? Can our in-laws take the kids and we go off on this journey? Would you be okay? And this is a partnership agreement.
Yes.
This is a family agreement. You sit down, like everything in coaching, you have to work out and design your alliance. What's going to work for you? And then it comes down to, here's what I'd like. And then the partner gets to say yes, no, or make a counteroffer, right?
Yes.
So
which is the edge of it, because when we exist in a world of, I think what I find when I'm working with leaders, one of the things I'm supporting them to learn to create in their lives is like enrollment, which is a conversation with people as opposed to permission, or kind of the other side would be like bulldozing. I'm going to do this, or can I do this? No. Okay. And it requires some courage to sit with someone and say, this is to share a desire, and then to have them have whatever authentic reaction they have to that, and then to stay in that discomfort, the dissonance a little bit as we navigate together. And if we all, what I notice is social media has made us less and less able to sit in that grindy part, that little bumpy road, and we jump out so quickly. So we've all become very, well, what would be the right word? Like almost allergic to any feeling of discomfort.
I agree. I dissociate as much as possible from social media, but you've brought me back in because it's so much fun to interact with you. I'm just like, let's do this. It's just fun. As long as it's fun, I'll continue to do it.
Yes, totally.
But that piece of, so it takes, first of all, the awareness of what's going on for you here to recognize that this is what I'd like. That's number one. So even just coming, for me, those first 28, 29 years, 30 years of recognizing where I was out of dissonance with myself, or I was in dissonance with myself, out of integrity, that's when I had to go, okay, so now I have to make a change, or I live with feeling uncomfortable. And that's where I was saying, when the feeling of discomfort of the change becomes less than the feeling of discomfort of the status quo, you make the change. You have to make the change, because it's like, I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm going to trust that I have all the support that I need, because I cannot live like this anymore.
Yes.
I cannot live like this anymore. And so when you recognize that, and you have a partner who loves you and cares about you, and you're starting from that unconditional positive regard, we love each other, we care about each other, our inner health is important to each of us. We care about how we model. Someone asked, I think it was Andrew, how do you model being a parent?
Daniel, yeah.
Daniel, it's important that you live in integrity to model that to your kids. So if you're living in a way that you're not honoring your dreams, what's the message you're giving your kids?
Yes. So often that's the thing where you ask the parent, like, so what do you want? They're like, I want my kids to have everything they want. And that creates a chain down the bloodline. where what's taught is live out your wants through your children. And then ultimately the way of being there is my wants are not as important. And then they're going to do the same to theirs, and so on and so forth.
And that's where we get into ancestral muck.
Yes.
What happened with my mother, she was living her dreams through me.
Right.
And so, I disappointed her when I left the doctor husband and left the corporate career, and she really had a hard time with it. So, each one of us has a responsibility to ourselves to first and foremost make sure that you're happy. What do you need to feel happy? Because everything's vibrational. And if you're not living in integrity with your vibration, you're getting a reflection of all these things that are wrong with your life, and you're not stopping to take stock of where you're out of integrity, you're going to keep getting that vibrational reflection over and 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 over until you're ready to make it. Esther puts it, getting ready to be ready, right? I'm a huge fan of attraction.
Let me ask a question. So woo, love it. And there was a time 15 years ago where I would have immediately turned off this live because I had learned to live so profoundly in the absence of spirit. I'd gotten so good at, like, if I can figure it out, then I don't need to trust, and I won't be at risk of betrayal or disappointment or whatever, because they'll come along for the ride when we give ourselves over, when we trust. And so I was very good at, like, there's no need for spirit, that all of this woo-woo nonsense is nonsense. And there was a point where I started to lean into this, but most of it happened organically, much to my surprise. As I started to let go of those things and discover they were kind of tedious and took a lot of energy, I started to open up to this other stuff. I'm curious, was your upbringing always like spirituality, astrology, whatever? Cool. Okay, great. So tell us about your journey for that.
No, not at all. Not even close. Which is why it's so funny that, my father's so obviously it's my father's side of the family that's more spiritual. And with him dying and them in India, sort of my connection and my bridge to that piece was disconnected anyway. But, I think we all have, so you talked about, gosh, you said so many things that I wanted to pick up on. But one of the ones is that we constantly compare ourselves to others.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I always look at it this way. You see the beautiful background, that I'm sitting in front of. Each one of those flowers. Do you think they ever look at the flower next to them and go, hey, why aren't I yellow? I want to be yellow. I want to be taller. They don't. They are absolutely sovereign in their existence. And animals too. The bird doesn't get up in the morning and go, I'm having a bad feather day. The bird is the bird. And
yes.
Nature has so much to teach us in just the art of being. And I kind of lost my train of thought. Where were we going?
Well, so I was asking you, like, your journey into spirituality, so ultimately.
Yeah, so it's that story, me too, Adam, completely disconnected. Woo didn't exist in my life. The closest I got was Khalil Gibran when I was, when my father died, somebody gave me that book and I read it. And the other one.
What is that? Is that The Alchemist, or it's The Prophet? That's right. Yes.
And the other one was Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach.
Yes. One of my favorite. Illusions is my book, but very similar kind of vibe on both of those. Yeah.
But many of those stories were, and I used to write poetry and I used to write stories, and I had all this within me. But I think what happens, and if you're a parent, listen carefully here, because children are so impressionable and they look to their elders, their parents in particular, for approval. And if you judge what they've created, they're going to stop creating, because kids just want to please. Most kids just want to please. And so for me, and maybe, I don't know, the new generation, maybe they're not as much like that. I don't know. But certainly for me, if I didn't get, oh, Annie, that was such a beautiful drawing, or instead I would have gotten, oh, that's cool. whatever, like just a sort of a dismissal,
Yeah.
I immediately would conclude I'm not very good at this, and I dropped it. So I dropped writing, I dropped painting, I dropped drawing, I dropped music, I dropped all these things because I thought I wasn't very good at them. And instead did what the whole world tells you should do, which is get a career, make money,
Yes.
right? But ultimately, I think everybody comes around to recognizing that that is not a joyful path. And I saw pretty early on that working until you're, I'm about to be 65 this year, working until you're 65, until you have no more energy left, and then retire, and then have a life, and then enjoy. This is insane. It's insane.
Yes. Yeah, I see a lot of people, well, often people put certain things in their life on scales. I can either be rich, wealthy, and have repute, or I can have, the lifestyle that I want and spend time with my family. And then they're trying to figure out, how do I balance these two things? And they're sort of like, okay, I'll just work 80 hours a week until I have enough money amassed, and then I'll shift the scales this way. Or they might try to find that magical midpoint, like perhaps a government job where they get some of the money and repute and some of the lifestyle. But all of these iterations, you still have two things created at odds with one another. Like the breakthrough, the path of mastery is to take all of that off the scales and start to be like, oh, somewhere along the way, I created these two things as competing with one another.
And you make an important point. I created.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and until we can recognize that it's our choices that are getting us the life that we've got in front of us, nothing's going to change, because you're
Yeah.
going to keep making choices and thinking it's that you're a victim of your life, instead of going, well, okay, so I have kids and I have obligations. That's true. And I wonder, and if just even asking the question, like, I wonder what I could create that would give me the sense of freedom, that would really honor who I am being and who I would like to be and what I want to become, and have that conversation. Like, doesn't that make you breathe? Don't you start feeling like, oh, suddenly I'm not under the heavy
But
cloud, and
I notice I also like, there's two things that are coming to mind. The first is the world around us to some extent is, I'll use the word like hostile to that idea, because the world around us has been created innocently from a place of fundamental goodness, but nevertheless, you need to do what you need to do, not what you want to do. So there's like, anytime we're seeking into the question you've just invited, we're overcoming some inertia. And it's like, it's a practice, just like meditation, right? The first time we sit down, well, for me, it sucked. And even most days, I don't want to meditate. And I sit down and my mind's like, how about we think about that thing that happened 25 years ago? I'm like, great, I've been waiting to think about that, finally. And so there's like that incredible act of compassion and like sacredness with which we must hold ourselves as we practice with these things. And then the second thought is, what I love about us humans is how potent we are, how powerful we are beyond our wildest belief. And part of the way that happens is we have our beliefs about that we created, and then we create a world around us that's a reflection of those beliefs. And then people end up in conversations with coaches that don't have training, that aren't really deep in their own work, and they just get told that's just your story. And that's so unhelpful, because on the one hand, it's true, but on the other hand, they've created a world around them that's a reflection of it. So it's both a story and reality. And it requires like tremendous love for ourselves and grace and forgiveness to start to pull this apart bit by bit by bit. And we got to honor every step along the way.
well, you're making a great case for hiring a coach.
That's all I'm ever trying to do.
And especially a masterful coach in particular, because
Yes.
the practice of being is not one, like you said, it's overcoming inertia. It is not taught in schools,
Yes.
much to my chagrin.
Mm-hmm.
It's not taught by families. It's not taught, it's not supported or recognized in most organizations. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
And so when it, we talked a little bit about the core values index in our meeting yesterday, Adam,
Yes.
and I'll just take a moment to talk about it. So if anybody knows about the core values index, it's tailored protocols. It gives you your core values, like it's where you operate from innately, your values that you operate, that you're born with. And for me, I'm called a merchant. It's profound love. I'm the highest love. Lynn Taylor, who created it, called me, he said, "You're the highest love I've ever seen." Like he's never had anyone be that high. And it could be really used for wonderful things. It could also be used for manipulating terrible things. It's the most impactful of all of them. And why I bring that up is because when you have that as a core value, and even even some of it, and you have it too, I know you do, there's a push from inside to follow that inner calling. And you can't ignore it. If you do, you get hit with that 2x4 inevitably. And so then you have to take stock. And for some people that comes as a terminal illness, and then they finally get it. Or, my father on his deathbed said to me, "I wish I'd never married your mother." I mean, what a bomb.
Yeah.
Right. But why did he wait? Why did he have to die to have to leave, to honor his own life?
Yes.
But that practice of being, it takes you face to face with that inside desire. And that's the courage. I mean, that's the place where you have to have so much courage to just sit with it. And just because you sit with it doesn't mean you have to act on it. But if you do everything in your power to escape from it, I promise you it will find you. It will find you.
There's no, well, one of the things that I love about the path of mastery, and let's start to shift our conversation and that just what mastery means to us, and then talk about mastery as a coach. But like one of the things I so love about being a lifelong student, a committed lifelong student of this path, is that I develop more and more awe and reverence for human beings in all of the ways they show up. So like I have so much awe and reverence for our capacity as humans to like adapt to what we think we need to adapt to. So we're actually incredibly remarkable at not hearing the dissonance, because we think that desire, that thing that I don't want, that part of me that's saying, get out, that's wrong. And then we get so good at shaping it's to our detriment ultimately, but I'm just always in awe of our strength and our capacity to like create these structures that allow us to keep going forward, because that's what we have to do, because we're a good soldier or whatever. And then I'm in awe of the courage that we're able to muster up, and the strength and the like, the tremendous trust to start to set that stuff down. It's unbelievable to witness humans go through that.
And that's where I recognize that chatterbox. So people who live in their heads, who have a lot of thoughts that's guiding them all the time, do this, do this, do this. And if you ever just pay attention to those thoughts, you'll find, I think it's 60,000 thoughts a day, someone said. I'm
pretty sure I'm twice that much. I feel like I'm a high performer in this area.
Smoke coming out of my ears sometimes. But it's like they're pretty contradictory.
Yes.
Sometimes. And they're all based on assumptions, all of them. And so you're interacting with somebody, and then they have a look on their face, and suddenly you're thinking, oh, well, they're thinking this about me. And then you interact with them based on that as if it's true, and you don't know it's true. And that's what we get into trouble with our conversations with everyone, and especially as coaches on the path of coaching mastery. Watch your assumptions, because they're all over the place. What your client has said that they, well, this is a big mountain for me. And then you think you know what they mean. Oh, I know what she means by a big mountain. And you don't inquire about it. And then you interact from there. You've just missed out on an important and huge opportunity to go deeper. And that's what coaching mastery is. Because coaching mastery will take people out of intention and into execution. So it doesn't just get left as a good intention. And why? Because you've uncovered their true, sincere, authentic, driving desire and what's underneath, what it is that they want.
Yeah, Yeah. One of the things that's really interesting about as people move through this path and become more and more masterful is like I like to use the contrast, I guess, of like someone managing or telling or like consulting. And those, the higher up you go, it's almost like you have to, in some ways, you have to do more. Whereas in coaching, as we go into mastery, it requires more capacity to be with, but you actually do far less. And that's why it requires so much capacity, because we're being with the part of ourselves. It's like, am I providing enough value? And we're being with the part of that other person that's like, hurry up and help me because I feel stupid right now and I need you to rescue me. And we're actually doing so little. The further in that is almost confronting in and of itself. For me, certainly, and for a lot of the people I train and work with, I can see that like beautiful desire to be of value and help other human beings. And then the courage it takes to set that down and trust themselves and trust the person across from them.
Absolutely. That is huge. We have not been taught that I don't know is okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is just not acceptable. I remember when I was in grade school, if I gave an answer if I don't know, I was like reprimanded or put in a corner for it as a child. Like it just wasn't acceptable. And then you grow up and you always have to have an answer. You always have to prove that you're valuable, and on and on and on, all the way up through the workforce. Where does it change? Then we get into our coaching training, and then suddenly you're on the coaching mastery path. And now you're trying to find that place of, how do I stop feeling this drive to be of value to them, especially if you also do consulting at the same time.
Yes.
And, and most clients will come and say, give me the answers. I want the answers. You have the answers.
And they'll say it in their being, if not in their words.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I always say this as an analogy. If you go shopping and you try something on and you like it in the mirror, and you come out and you show whoever you're with, hey, what do you think? And they go, oh, I hate it. Do you put it back on the shelf or do you buy it? And that comes down to, how much do you trust yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you value yourself? And so that's why the path to coaching mastery starts with the work on yourself. That, coaching mindset is all about, you're only as good a coach as you are self-aware.
I want to elaborate on a piece you said about I don't know, and then I want to share something Andrew asked, and then let's talk about the essence of mastery. So we're taught I don't know isn't okay, but there's another step I notice people get caught in, which is, so first step is like, you must have the answer. Socratic method can sometimes like hammer that into us too, like law school, you're like, I don't want to be the loser that doesn't have the right answer. And then the next step is, I don't know, and I will sit here and that will be the end. and what we're not taught is, or the next thing we're not taught, which is really the path of leadership, I believe, because a leader is pushing down the grass where there's not already a path made. And the only way to do that is to walk forward with I don't know. To not say, I don't know, and that's okay, and I'm going to stay here, but like, I don't know, and I'm going to take a swing. And I might completely horribly mess it up. And I'm trusting myself that I can rectify, I can right, so to speak, whatever mess gets created, so that we can continue to learn as we walk forward through this path.
Well, and
Anything to add to that? Yeah.
That's the adventure of life. I mean,
yes.
People think that they go on a trip somewhere and they should plan every second of every day that they're away. Whereas a real true adventure is, you don't know what's going to be coming up for you, and you'll deal with, and to trust yourself that you have enough of whatever you need for that journey to handle it. And so, in Coaches Training Institute, we use the acronym NCRW, Naturally, Creative, Resourceful, and Whole, meaning I am whole, I have my own answers, I am not broken, and neither is my client. And so on the coaching mastery path, can we trust ourselves enough to not have to prove our value, to park our ego enough that we can allow them to sit in their stew without rescuing them? Can we trust them enough that they have the resources they need to get their own answers, even if they don't have them in the moment? To sit in the I don't know stew and not say anything? right?
Aha. Yeah. Andrew asks, he says, I'd be curious to hear where the two of you see the trajectory of coaching going in terms of credentialing, immersion into the world, etc. So what are your thoughts on that?
How about you answer that first, Adam?
Sure. So the first thing in my experience is that there's no degree of being able to draw a fence through credentials or rules or requirements that like will, I'm trying to find the right word, but ultimately work the way we kind of hope it will. Like the hope is if we just dial this in enough, then only the good will pass, and then we can guarantee we can rely on this. And ultimately there's always a way to turn that stuff into something rote, and then people will make their way through, and then you end up with like, you can end up with MCCs, or you can end up with lawyers, or you can end up with whatever, like people that don't really bring the being, because that's what we're working with. I think at the heart of mastery in any profession, it's not necessarily what someone's doing, it's who they're being amidst all of what they're doing. And so I think that the trajectory, this is a little metaphoric, but like, I think those of us that are plugged into being, that have gotten the rich gift that transformation and being has to offer, are like a kind of like a light. And that light starts to light up other people around us. And they're like, huh, I really want a taste of that. That's compelling. And it's like those lights are spreading out through the world. And so I don't know what happens as far as credentialing. I still think it's absolutely important because it's a structure that supports people to get a taste of that. But I don't think it ever becomes the one size fits all. As long as we're all doing this, then everything is resolved. There's always the work of finding masters. And I think ultimately what will happen is more and more people will get a taste of how good this stuff is and be like, I want that regardless of what it looks like. So that's loosely the trajectory I see.
Right. That's a definitely sounds true to me. And I mean, I don't have a magic, I don't have a looking glass to look through and predict the future, but I do know that having a credential to me is about being in integrity with myself.
Yes.
So, I can tell you a story. When I first started coaching back in 1997, I have multiple holistic modality certifications, many of them, because I had my own challenges health-wise. And so every time I had a challenge, I just studied the modality that was helping me so that I could help others. And so I was actually 2 years working with a psychotherapist on myself and trying to discover what is my career, what is my profession. This is when I actually came back from India. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And, I looked at multiple things, becoming a naturopath and a whole bunch of things like that. But he said, you'd be a great coach. And he did a number of assessments on me. And sure enough, it was the profession that fit. But it was $20,000 a year back then. And I was pretty broke. I'm from India, right? So I was like, oh, I can't do it. It's too hard. And so I just started to coach. And he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to mentor you as best I can. And we'll get the agreement of your clients that they're agreeing to, it's like supervision, to do this, and I'll help you. And so soon enough, I started building up a practice that became extremely lucrative. And then I think my mother decided she was going to help me out. So she dropped some money on me. And so what really started it was I got on a phone call. I was going to do a barber share training certification. And I got on a call with a coach who happened to be a coach from CTI. And she said, hey, are you trained in coaching? And I said, nope. And she said, what the hell are you doing? And I remember being so mad at her. I got off the phone and I was like, who the hell does she think she is? I was so, and of course,
Yes.
having done enough work on myself, I knew enough to recognize that I felt out of integrity with myself. And
Yes.
that was what was nailing me. And so I got right onto the International Coach Federation website. I picked 3 different schools. I do everything very thoroughly. I interviewed like 3 coaches from each school, and then I landed on CTI because they met with my value system perfectly. That was exactly the style that I loved and wanted to learn. And Laura Whitworth, I mean, oh my God, Laura Whitworth,
Uh-huh.
Anyway, and so I got that training. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I didn't think that training would make a difference. I
Mm.
had enough arrogance and ego to think that I knew what I needed to know.
Yeah.
Do you recognize that at all? Do you have that too? And then I did the training, and the more I did the training and I saw how much there was inner work to be done on myself still, after even all the work that I've done, I developed so much respect for coach training. And then I went on to do my certification with CTI. And then I went on to do organizational relationship systems coaching, to do business team coaching, and then team coaching international, relationship coaching. And I did executive team coaching for years and years and years. And every time I did that and continued to learn, my abilities to be more effective for my clients went exponentially skywards.
Yes.
So if you're a coach listening to this and you aren't trained, please go get any training from an International Coach Federation has got 50,000 members in the world. There's training all over the world. They have wonderful accredited schools. There's so many schools. I don't even know how many anymore. They don't have to cost you $20,000, and it was worth every penny.
One of the first coaches I ever, like, the person that kind of ushered me into this work, who now doesn't coach, and he was sort of like came into it, was working in, and then like moved on. But in our first conversation, I was in law school at the time, clear I wasn't going to be a lawyer for very long. And he was like, the first thing he said was, okay, well, get training. And I said, well, but I've always been this kind of person. I've got some intuition around this, like many of us feel that are drawn into this work. And he said, yeah, you don't have to get training. Like, most of the people in the profession don't. They're untrained. But just because that's true doesn't mean you should do it. And hold this profession with the kind of reverence that you want everyone else to hold it with. So like, bring that integrity, like be the integrity, be the sort of way you want people to relate to what you're up to. And the irony, because we can't see our survival mechanism or our shadow, is people get into this work and they're like, I feel like people don't take it seriously and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because you're not taking it seriously.
That's right.
And the other thing I hear is, like, when I started down this path, I had a lot of righteousness that people should be trained. You should be trained. But these days, that's shifted to something softer, which is, look, people are going to do what they're going to do anyhow, regardless of what I think they should. But it's like, the same reason inviting people to work with a coach is so easy for me is because it's so rich and it has given me so much of my life. Why not give yourself this delicious nectar? Drink from this ambrosia, stop starving yourself, indulge, because it's so rich and it completely transforms our lives. And it stops you burning out when you work with your clients, and it makes everything so much easier and richer and all of that sort of stuff. So I think we've done a great job answering Andrew's question.
What do you think, Andrew? Did we?
Let's talk a bit about the essence of mastery before we wind down. So what do you think people should know about this awesome event that we're taking part in?
Well, let me just give you a little bit of, do I have some time to talk about?
You sure do. Yep.
So it actually got birthed in 2017 because, well, in 2009, I was ready to apply for my MCC. I had all the hours. I had my 2 recommendation letters. And I thought I could pass just by applying. And so I started to do a little research, and I found out that it was a 93% failure rate. And I was like, holy moly. And in those days, I had to do one recording and one live exam, coaching an examiner and having an observer. And I was like, okay, I better go figure out what is it that we need. And what I realized was that I didn't really get what the core competencies were. So I really went to work, and I gathered 30 PCCs all ready to apply for their MCC. And I brought in 14 different assessors, and I interviewed them every month. And it was really the first Essence of Mastery Summit, but I didn't know it at the time. I offered myself up to do like mock oral exams, and had everybody, watch me get debriefed in front of the entire group.
Great way to lean into an edge.
Right?
Assuming it was one. I imagine that would be quite edgy.
Anyway, out of that group of 30, only 4 of us went on to apply for our MCC, and 3 out of 4 of us passed on the first round. So I knew I was onto something. And then later, when I went to renew my credential, same experience as you, these programs were often $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to renew my credential if I wanted to take something, and none of them were inspiring. Certainly not after being a coach for so long. And so I talked to Fran Fisher, who is one of our favorite people.
Mm-hmm.
And she helped me a great deal along my coaching mastery pathway back in 2009. And we became friends as a result of that journey. And I said, what are you doing to renew your credential? And she goes, I don't know. I'm in the same boat as you. Nothing's inspiring me. And I said, why don't we create something for ourselves? Let's invite some of our peers and let's talk to them. Let's just get some of their key, wisdoms, and find out what turns them on and what things they love to do. And let's talk about the core competencies and coaching mastery and what is it, and that's how the Essence of Mastery came to be. We started off with the Essence of Mastery. What is it? That was exactly the question. And so it evolved. And so 2023 is our 7th annual event. Adam is one of our featured speakers. It's going to be entirely live June 5th through 14th. It's 22.5 ICF core competency units, entirely.
Those are the hard ones.
And if you can't make some or all the events, that's not a problem, because all of the events of the other, so there's 10 speakers all around the world. As I said, Adam is one of them, and he's going to be talking about client creation from the core competencies, which everybody could use.
Yes.
And I can't wait to learn from you. And so the 9 speakers are going to be recorded, and those will be available for life inside our private members area. My event, which is 9 hours, so that's June 12th through 14th, 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern time.
You're not going to just do 9 hours straight.
God, no.
Okay, good call. Good. Yeah, I'm just going to check to make sure that wasn't your old historical self.
No, God, no. It's 12 to 3 each day. That's plenty. And what I'm doing with that is I'm offering 3 different options for people to attend. So when you buy a ticket to the summit, you get access to all of this. You can come to all of the events live. You can choose to come to one of my events, either in June, September, or December. I am also recording my event as well, and that will be available too. So it's all on Coaching Mastery. Every participant who has ever attended it comes back with huge praise, saying they had no idea. I'm going to be doing live coaching demos. We'll be talking coaching scenarios. There'll be breakout rooms. We get the feedback that I wasn't this excited about coaching since my coach training. So people love it.
Yeah. And I think I want to talk about what I'm going to speak to. And before we go there, for me, often people are curious, what's the distinction between leadership and coaching? And it's an interesting one, because I hold that coaches lead and leaders coach. Coaches must lead because we have to be in our work. We can't tell people to do something, not that we're about telling people to do something, but we can't support someone to step through something we have not stepped through ourselves. It doesn't work. We can't see because it's in our blind spot if we haven't walked through it. So in that regard, coaches must lead and leaders must coach, because the way that leaders develop more leaders is through the vehicle of coaching. That's the modality that actually develops leadership. And all of these things are so like, I often have leaders that I work with that come to me out of the blue, are like, how do I want to have this conversation with someone on my team, but I'm worried about their reaction to it and them feeling confronted. And it's like, this work would so benefit that too. It's all there. And so we're intending this for coaches seeking mastery, but I really think that there's something available for anyone that's like, I want to be a better communicator. I want to better be able to like bring to the forefront the stuff on my team that is currently staying hidden. I want to better be able to smooth stuff out or work with what's in the space in the moment. This is the game. This will support that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are not good as a world, and maybe I'm being too broad, but certainly in the Northern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere, I should say, at communication. We suck at it. People are full of assumptions and they interact. And then there's like, I call it, if you've ever done interfamily systems work, it's wounded kids interacting with wounded kids. That's what we have
Yes.
conversations about. People, don't know how to disagree with each other, with making the other person wrong. And so we're dealing with all this dysfunction and wondering why, everyone's struggling. So I kind of
Yes.
have a stake in the ground for why coaching mastery and why I do the summit. Yes, it's about getting more masterful coaches out there. I think that's important, but more than that, bigger stake in the ground is let's have the human beings on our planet, have better conversations that are respectful and full of positive, unconditional regard, where we can hold each other with respect, with honor, learn how to listen without making the other wrong, without having 15,000 things in your head.
Yeah.
The four horsemen, right?
Yeah.
Defense, contempt, stonewalling, and blame, right? We've got a ton of that running rampant in conversations all over the place. So just learning how to have a better conversation with another human being, never mind coaching, just being.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn right there.
Yeah. And then the part I'll say on mine is one of the things I often hear are people talking about like how much they love coaching and how much they don't like the business of coaching. And in that statement is a separation, as though these two things are separate. And even the ICF often won't provide competencies for anything related to the business of coaching. So there's that separation created again. And what is so unfortunate about that is that because that separation is created as real, as something like that is real in the world, coaches never get to arrive at the point where these two things can coexist, where the experience you love as a coach could be the exact same thing that you're doing to create clients. And when we approach our business of coaching from that same place, magic happens, because then what we start to do is we serve people from a place regardless of whether they hire us or not. We bring, I'm going to show up and be coach to this person from the moment we start talking to them. The moment they reach out to us and say, I trade Bitcoin, do you want to buy some from me? We can bring this way of being to them. I'm not suggesting trying to get those people to hire you, but we can be coach with them right out of the gate. And that transforms the world. And as we do that, and as we show up in that way, to your point right at the start, Annie, abundance comes to us. And that's heaven on earth. Because we are no longer, I'll just finish this quickly, we're no longer grasping at something or trying to like, I will do this so as to get there. That's not that fun.
No, exactly. It's an entire different way of doing business. It's the way we have been taught, and my background's marketing, is
You know this.
Force, push, force. It is absolute. The truth to building a successful business is the opposite. And so much of the successful business requires you to do the inner work, to find your own niche, to find your own gift. And like for me, when I landed on mentoring coaches, I'm an MCC and PCC assessor. When I landed on, I love to mentor coaches towards getting their MCC credential. That's where everything changed. My entire business shifted, because suddenly it was like the radio station came into tune itself. It's vibration. And when you talk about what you love, you emanate that vibration. And then suddenly it's this irresistible invitation to whoever's in front of you. I want some of that.
Yes.
I want to have that. So when you talk about client creation from a place of being in a way that honors who you are, and in a way that's not about, "Oh, I want this client, it's all about the money," but I really see you. I see,
Yes.
and I would like to be of assistance to you. And I know we can do this, and we're a team, and I'm in your back pocket. You get that assistance. I'm here for you. You don't get that conversation every day.
Aha. Yeah, you stand out unique amidst, you become a laser clear signal amidst the noise, the everyday our lives are noisy, and you become this person that's just like, people are left in this experience regardless of whether they are going to become a client, regardless of whether they're going to hire you, Annie, or any of us. You become so compelling. They're just like, I've never had. I went, when we went to buy our car, it was about 3 years ago, and the salesperson loved Mazdas. It's cool. I like Mazdas too. But anyhow, we were going, and he was just like in the car, and he's driving. He's like, "This car's so cool," and blah blah blah. I was stoked about it. And we got out, and then he was like, "So yeah, that's what the car's like." He let us test drive it, and he's like, "Let me know if you if you want to talk more about it." And then he just walked off. He wasn't attached. He didn't try to convince me of anything. I wasn't like, "What are your concerns?" He just left. And I was stunned and just like, this is so cool. And in the space that created for me, all of my childhood programming was think about every decision down to the nth degree. Look at 8 more cars. And in my heart, I was like, that's the car I want. That's the car I'm going to buy. And it
What
was
did you get? Which one?
a CX-5, a Mazda CX-5.
Beautiful.
And we've loved it ever since. It's been a fantastic car. And I learned in that moment, like, a little bit more to trust myself. It's okay. I knew that was what I wanted to buy, and that was the car to make. Even I didn't want to look at 8 other cars. And that's that being that we're talking about, is just so compelling. He bought into what he was putting on offer.
What a great analogy. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
being able to walk the walk of, he loves it. He's
Yes.
got the invitation there to you. You trusted yourself enough to, hey, I don't need to look at 8 more cars. I'm going for this, and to honor yourself to do that decision. That's brilliant, Adam.
Yeah. And it's really funny because we learn how to be from our parents, and I love my parents so much. And it's also quite funny because they've been talking about renovating their bathroom for about 20 years, and they're in the process, and there's 8 different plans and 38 different people they're talking to. I'm just like, you could just do this in whatever.
They have to hire a coach.
That's exactly. Okay, we're about at time. I want to put a link in here for people that want to learn more about the summit here. POW, I think that's the right one. You can read more about it. You can sign up there. If you use my first name, ADAM, then you get a red hot discount, I believe, which this summit's all 110?
$110 off.
Which might to some people be like, that's not that much money, until they realize how little it costs to attend Essence of Mastery. It's almost a crime that we're putting this out for so little, but I think it comes out to about $500 or less than that. $529.
Yeah.
Crazy for over 35 hours of awesomeness.
22.5 hours in total. And
that includes your 9 hours?
Includes my 9 hours, and 13.5 of them are the 9 of you, because there's 9 other coaches. There's with Adam, there's 9 of them in total. And all of them are going to be talking about really yummy, juicy, wonderful stuff, creating the coaching agreement, all focused on coaching mastery and focused on being in particular.
Yes.
And I can't wait, Adam, because you're so dynamic, and you have so much that you've garnered in wisdom from your, in my perspective, younger years than me. You know what? I can't wait to learn from you, and I can't wait to hear your perspective on building business from that invitational place.
It's going to be awesome. Annie, it's been a treat to sit in conversation with you. Any parting words, any final thoughts around this or anything else for people watching, anything you want to share?
Yeah, come to the summit, essenceofmasterysummit.com, and join us. It's fun. We're going to have a hoot. If you can come to the live sessions, it's going to be interactive Q&A. It's really going to be a lot of fun. And if you can't, you watch the video recordings. They're still lots of fun. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Oh, and if people want to learn more about you, so if they're like, the summit sounds cool, but I also want to know about Annie, where do they do that?
Yep. Radicalwisdom.com is my website. Radical Wisdom. And I came up with that one because I do everything, I guess you could say, radically. You know, it's very different from what we've been taught and grown up with. Radicalwisdom.com. You can reach out there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Annie. I love you. It's a treat to spend this time together, and I'm excited for our time in June. Oh, we should say, we didn't say the dates, June 5th through 9th, yeah?
June 5th through 14th. So
14th,
June 5th
thank you, that's right.
9th is the 9 of you, and they're going to be at 10 a.m. And 11:30 a.m. Eastern time.
Yes.
And I think one of you, and I can't remember if it's you, Adam, is doing a 3 p.m. Is it you?
I can't remember either. It's in my trusted system, not in this murky,
anyway, there's a
place.
schedule on the website, so you can see whether or not you can attend live, but attending live really would be great. And then my event is on busting the myths of MCC, because I just, as a mentor coach, I hear all of the rules that coaches have made up about what it takes to get that MCC and be masterful, and it's going to be fun.
Aha, cool. All right, I'm going to end this live, and then they're not going to get to, these people aren't going to get to see it, but we'll just chat a little bit before we finish up. So Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Daniel and Andrew, for your questions. Everyone have an amazing weekend. And if you're listening on the podcast and you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to me or to Annie or to any of us. We'd love to talk about this stuff.
Oh, they can see me on Annie Gelfand MCC on Instagram, and also on Facebook. I think it's just Radical Wisdom. Facebook.
Cool. Follow Annie there too. Bye, everyone.